Hey, this is Brian.
And Shelby.
And you're listening to the Hyperspace
Pod Blast. Aren't you a little short for a podcast?
Huh?
Welcome to Hyperspace Pod Blast.
Beep boop. Boop.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Brian's a little under the weather today.
I am. Like, if the weather is 7 foot, I'm 6'3".
But yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You also are 6'3".
Oh,
All the time.
that's true.
Anyway, what are we talking about today, Brian?
We are talking about upsets in Star Wars. We are inspired by the recent unprecedented upset of a 16 seed over a number 1 seed in the men's NCAA tournament. If you don't know what that is the basketball tournament for like the highest tier colleges here in the US of A. So we decided to talk about big upsets in the Star Wars universe because of this. But I think before we dig into that, let's talk about what do you consider an upset? Is it like any time that two people or entities face off and one is expected to win and ends up losing? Or does it have to be more of like a David and Goliath type situation?
I think, well, at first I thought about this and I was like, yeah, David and Goliath is what it should be. But then also I was thinking like, even when rebels are kind of the underdogs, I still expect them to win.
You know, that's because of the way we already know Star Wars works and sort of general the good guys always win type of situation. I think that's
Right.
kind of true. That's a good point.
Right. So I think it's kind of an upset whenever the bad guy wins in general, because we're always looking for that happy ending and everything's okay. But also I think it has to do with whoever is expected to win based on their abilities and previous knowledge that we have of those people. If they lose, then that's an upset.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for too, except I like to think of it, since Star Wars especially is this big galactic scale thing, I like to think of it as a little more of a, I would go as far to say, like, for example, Qui-Gon v. Maul. I don't know if there's an upset there. I don't know if there's a heavy favorite. You know, cards on the table, I would say Maul killing Qui-Gon is an upset. But then when I think about it a little further, I'm like, is it really though? I mean, is it really?
Well, yeah, to me, no one ever said Qui-Gon was like this amazing Jedi in terms of fighting.
Right, exactly.
He may have been
he is
amazing.
a Jedi master.
He is a Jedi master, but he's also, I always think of Qui-Gon not as this amazing Jedi when it comes to dueling someone else, but an amazing Jedi when it comes to being connected to the Force.
I can get on board with that. He seems to be more of like a cerebral Jedi, like always talking about the living Force and your concentration and things like that, where Obi-Wan is like, this weapon is your life type, you know.
It would have been interesting to see Qui-Gon's perspective on being generals.
Yeah, true. I don't think he would have been happy with that at all.
No, I don't think so. So yeah, I don't really see that as an upset to me.
Yeah, same. So I think it's more of a grander scale when it comes to Star Wars. Like I guess most of the time when we talk about upsets, it's a sports connotation. So to keep it on that kind of level, like when a 5 seed beats a 4 seed, that's really not that big of an upset. You know what I mean?
Right, because they're quote unquote ranked.
They're assumed to be close anyway, right? Yeah. So that's technically that would be an upset, but I think I'm closer to the if it's a sliding scale, I'm closer to David and Goliath than a 5 over 4.
So, with your own definition of an upset in mind, what do you think is the biggest upset in the Star Wars universe?
You know, before a certain other movie came out, I would have said the Death Star destruction in A New Hope, because that thing is like a monolithic, world-killing super weapon, and Luke blows it up with an X-Wing, you know, just like shooting womp rats. But then we find out that the whole thing's been rigged in Rogue One. So in my opinion, that's not that much of an upset anymore. That's like if a big upset happens in sports, but someone rigged the game to win a lot of money.
Yeah, someone was like, go for this.
Yeah,
That's his
right?
weakness.
Like, you know, go down in round 7. I've got $30 billion on you.
Something like that,
Yeah.
Or someone, you know, having the ability to go in and watch their practice.
Yeah, true. But I mean, to be fair, you still have to do it. Luke still had to make the shot, and
Exactly,
it's a heck of a shot. But still, had that little detail not been in the plans, that might not have been impossible.
Right. Because when we talked about this, spoiler alert, we kind of talk about stuff before we have an episode.
Yes.
My immediate answer to this was, oh, Rogue One on Scarif, period.
Yeah. Well, it's because your immediate answer to
Anything
blank
is...
Star Wars, Rogue One.
Rogue One, Jin, or so, Rogue One.
Or Thrawn.
Or Thrawn, yeah. But I think, whenever I think of the last fighter with a sharp stick and nothing else to lose, I think of Rogue One.
That's like an upset and a half there.
Yeah.
Like make 10 men feel like 100. That's kind of like the rebellion in general, which goes back kind of to what you said. The whole time you're watching these movies, which I think is part of what makes Empire Strikes Back so... What?
And The Last Jedi.
Well, true, yeah. But it's one of those things where you almost take for granted the obstacle that they have to overcome because you just assume they're going to win because, okay, these are the good guys. Obviously, they're going to win. How are they going to do it? It's almost one of those type situations.
It's a foregone conclusion that the rebels will win.
Right.
They'll find a way.
Which would be kind of interesting if JJ flips this whole thing on its head and at the end of episode 9 there's just like all out civil war. It'd be kind of like, I don't know, sort of like the end of Revenge of the Sith, kind of an unhappy...
I don't think you can do that without having a conclusion already there. It
Yeah,
has to
that's
be an
what I was-
in-between.
Yeah, I was gonna say the difference being obviously that it was a prequel, so you knew, hey guys, everything comes out okay, don't worry about it. But I don't know. I'm definitely in camp 10, 11, 12 are coming. So
Yeah, but I don't think that they would leave a trilogy on a, oh no.
that'd be amazing if they did that.
I mean,
wouldn't it?
yeah, but you can't do that. It's Star Wars is still for kids, and you're not going to do that, period.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be like on a doom and gloom dreadful ending. I'm just talking about not necessarily wrapped up tight little bow, you know.
yeah, someone
here-
still got away, and
Yeah.
they're already planning to bring back the Second Order. I don't know.
The Second Order. If that's literally what they call it, I'm done. Anyway, so you're Rogue One then.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the last battle on Scarif is your biggest upset.
Definitely. And I mean, that was like, because yes, they got the plans, but look at the cost.
Yeah, and I think you were right when you mentioned this when we, again, were talking about it earlier. Really like peeling back the covers here and letting people see inside the show.
Oh, what?
But you mentioned the fact that even with the original Death Star, they had a plan. You know, everyone was all in on this plan. They had the actual plans, so they knew about the exhaust port thing. With the Rogue One battle, everyone was like, no, we're not going to do it. We're all leaving. And then Radis found out that the Rogue One crew went, and he's like, yo, I'm going.
I
And
know,
then
it was
other
just
people are
like-
heck yeah, we're going. So it was just like, what's the plan? I don't know. Shoot people. Shoot the bad guys. Let's see what happens. That was...
Yeah, no communication
Yeah.
between all of the groups. It was just
Well,
like,
there's literally no communication between the people
Oh, yeah.
on the ground, and you know, it's...
that's part of the whole plot.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I almost want to agree with you, I guess. And I kind of think I do agree with you because of what I said earlier about how it used to be the Death Star until we found out. So yeah, there's so much against them that it's hard not to think that. And you know what? They lost, if not for Launch Guy. Vader almost got him. The Death Star almost got him. There was, I mean, they won by...
Just the skin of their teeth.
twice, really.
Yeah.
And then they almost, at the beginning of A New Hope, lost again. So, yeah, it's crazy. I think that whole sequence, I'm with you. You've convinced me.
So what are some other noteworthy upsets? Rebels, spoilers. One of the ones that came to mind that we just had was the Rebels on Lothal.
Yeah, but they cheated. You don't know. That does not count. Thrawn had that battle thoroughly in hand, and then Space Whales. Who
I mean, you
ever
can't-
plans for Space Whales?
No one...
That's ridiculous.
yeah.
And we're going to get to talking about Rebels
Right.
eventually.
But that's true. I mean, like, that is, in my mind, the only way you can beat Thrawn.
That's
is
true.
something like that. Something like Space Whales.
I'll go ahead and dip into another more recent one. I think Rey beating Kylo is a pretty big upset.
In The Force Awakens? I agree.
Because he really should have manhandled her, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's trained by both both Luke and Snoke.
Right.
And I mean, he's just more experienced in general.
Yeah. And I mean, Rey's no slouch. She practices with her staff and all that, but she, as Snoke says, had never handled a lightsaber before.
She tapped into the Force, like knowingly tapped into the Force. I'm sure she's used the Force on Jakku
right, yeah,
without
just like
knowing.
Anakin had with
Yeah,
the whole pod racing and everything.
But focusing and using it to her advantage in a fight, I mean, or any sort of interaction for what, a day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big upset, I think.
Which speaks to how powerful she is.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's a huge upset.
And I think to some extent, Ren wasn't necessarily trying to kill her offhand. I think if he wanted to do that, he may have just done it because, you know, they had that little exchange where he's like, you know, you need a teacher type thing. I feel like Sith or just Darksiders in general are always looking for that lackey. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
He was like, I can make you my lackey. And that's kind of what his whole game was in The Last Jedi as well.
Come on, be my apprentice so I can be the master.
Right, exactly. Even though it was kind of different because it was after he'd already killed Snoke. So
yeah,
he's just taking a different road than the Sith. He doesn't want to be redundant.
I get that. Yeah, I would agree that's a huge upset.
So what else do you have? I think, as we've kind of already mentioned, I think anytime the Rebels win over the Empire, it's an upset just because of how monstrous the Empire is. Like, they have every advantage in any fight, and the Rebels have almost every disadvantage. So all those little battles and everything, I think, would probably count.
What do you think about Yoda and Sidious?
Ooh. I think that might be another one of those Maul Qui-Gon things where it's like
too close to really.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an upset. I think this is one of those things where, from our viewer point of view, the fact that Yoda can lose is an upset because I think we all assume Yoda to be like the top tier, unbeatable Force user.
What about all the Jedi going to confront Sidious? Would you say that's an upset?
Oh, no.
No.
No, actually, I wouldn't. I think that's pretty fair at that point. I think Windu kind of tilts it toward the Jedi a little bit, but I mean, Sidious is the big daddy. There's only 2 Sith, so I think each Sith has to be a little more powerful than your average Jedi, and I think that makes Sidious, who's like this uber Sith, worthy of 4. I think it was 4. Yeah, 4 Jedi Masters. Though Windu is supposedly a really good fighter, so.
Well, then what do you say about Obi-Wan Maul? The first Obi-Wan Maul.
Yo, that's a big upset on Obi's part. I think Obi beating Maul is an upset, actually.
Yeah?
Yes. I think, sure, he's the apprentice, but Maul is a honed weapon. And I think, as we said, Maul, Qui-Gon, because Qui-Gon's a master, I feel like that's a pretty fair fight. But Obi-Wan, no one would have done that except Obi-Wan. I think pretty much any other Padawan at that point was like, he's the one falling down the tube cut in half, you know what I mean?
Oh, so you would say Obi-Wan Maul
is an upset for
the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, Anakin versus Sebulba, Anakin versus the Trade Federation ship.
You know what I think? I think that
let's do a
the
spin.
Gungans...
That's a good trick. Right, Georgie? Anyway.
I think the Gungans versus the droid army is an upset.
Ooh, that's a good one, actually. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that whole Padme's whole plan to, because honestly, that's probably the first real wrench that gets thrown into Sidious's plan. I mean, Sidious being Sidious, he works around it beautifully,
right,
but
because I mean, he's working both sides. He wins no matter what.
Right. But I mean, that's even before that conflict gets started. This is when it almost gets undone before it starts. But really, all he wanted from that whole situation was to get into that place of, sort of ultimate power as far as the Senate goes. And he got that. So he won. But I think it didn't go exactly as planned, which is not something
that he is used to.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's a big upset for Padme and for the Gungans and for Anakin and his 10-year-old awesomeness. So let's switch gears a little bit. And can you think of any instance where if the clear favorite hadn't won, the saga would have changed dramatically? I mean, the obvious answers are like Luke misses and Vader kills him.
Or
and there is no saga except
Rogue One, they don't get the Death Star plans.
Right. They're pretty
I
much
feel
dead
like,
in the water at that point.
Yeah, but I also think that, I don't know, maybe they would have gotten them a different way. It just would have taken longer, and I think it would have been much more difficult.
What if, say, it's sort of flipped around? What if we have a situation where Luke beats Vader in Empire Strikes Back? Imagine how drastically, that's kind of like what we're dealing with now.
Oh, yeah.
Kylo defeated Snoke. It's like, what?
Well, it's like,
Yeah, imagine your big bad, your awesome big bad Darth Vader gets killed in Empire Strikes Back.
See,
What?
I don't think it changes it that much, though. I mean,
You're really right. It doesn't,
because
unfortunately.
Sidious would have, he probably has at least like 2 semi-apprentices on the back burner.
Well, yeah, I mean, in theory, he could pluck an Inquisitor unless that goes away. We don't that was plot device.
Oh, stop.
I'm mostly kidding. But yeah, I think kind of unfortunately, you're right. Vader is really only important in so much as...
For Luke.
Yeah, exactly. It's...
Which
not...
I wonder if Luke could have been more tempted to the dark side had his father been defeated by him. I mean, sure, he would have defeated him, but then he may have...
Well, yeah, like, let's say he never got to say, no, I'm your father. So then in Return of the Jedi, Sidious is the one that's like, well, you killed your father. And he's like, what?
Oh, and like screws with him,
Yeah, that could have been...
Or imagine this. Imagine if... Do you think Vader upsetting Sidious, where he saves his son, do you think that's an upset?
I think that's an upset in so much as Sidious didn't see it coming. And anything Sidious doesn't see coming is an upset.
Right. So imagine Vader tries to overthrow him and save Luke, but he fails.
Oh yeah, Sidious is like, not today. And he just gets them both.
Yeah.
A father and son duo. Here's one thing that honestly is a little weird about Return of the Jedi in general. Say Luke does get killed right there. The Death Star blows up anyway. So, I mean, let's be honest. Lando is the hero.
Lando's the hero, yeah.
But anyway, that's a horse of a different color.
Also, imagine if the rebels won on Hoth.
Oh, so instead of having to retreat under duress, they just fight back straight away and win.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that probably gives them a higher casualty count, and then they just have to escape anyway because the Empire would just come back in bigger force.
Yeah.
So I don't think that really changes too much. What if the First Order killed all the Resistance at the end of The Last Jedi? Probably wouldn't change anything.
I don't... No, I think that would kind of be the end.
Yeah, right? That would be... There were some people that were saying, I think us included, someone forgot to tell Rian Johnson he was doing the middle of a trilogy, and that really would have put the
It really would have been the
hammer on
end.
it. Yeah.
And the idea that, those little kids at the end of The Last Jedi, that battle itself is what really stoked the desire for everyone in the galaxy to fight back.
Yeah, that's true. So if that doesn't happen...
I don't think that feeling of resistance, of rebellion.
Well, yeah, and that like almost trope-like hope kind of just overwhelming cowbell that you hear in the background of all of Star Wars now doesn't get rang.
Yes, I agree. What do you think happens if we mentioned Kylo and Rey? If Rey is defeated on Starkiller Base.
Ooh, like he kills Rey?
Mm-hmm.
I think every female Star Wars fan like burns down every cinema they're watching Star Wars in.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that would be a weird thing that would happen differently. Yeah, I don't know. Who's your new...
Perhaps Finn?
I guess. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if all of the new big three have a little bit of force power in them.
Yeah.
I think Poe, to be that good of a pilot, just like I think we've already mentioned with Anakin when he's a little kid being able to pod race, they have that innate ability. They're just a little bit better than they should be at something. And, we have that here in the real world. It's just kind of like savant or prodigy. But in Star Wars, that just means the Force is helping you. So, i.e., you're cheating. But...
Here's one, speaking of Poe, the upset of the rebellion taking out a dreadnought.
Yeah, or basically Poe taking out all of its cannons on his own. That's kind of an upset, honestly.
Isn't it expected?
It's expected that Poe can do it. I would think, though, with everything they have there, it's just like Kennedy says, 5 bloody minutes ago. If he had done what he wanted to, that never would have happened. It's basically an upset because Hux is a bit of a...
Oh, yeah, a very proud proud person. And,
There you go. That's a nice
And,
way to put it. Sorry.
think about if, say, they don't take out the dreadnought and Poe has the foresight to not call in the bombers and we don't have dead heroes.
Yeah, I mean, Poe learns his lesson way earlier. That would be nice. But imagine the opposite of that scenario where they do all that and then the dreadnought still stands.
Yeah, I mean,
Then I think his lesson comes home early, but in like the harshest possible way.
right. Or say that they don't take down the dreadnought, they get away, and he hasn't learned his lesson yet. Like, the seed hasn't even been planted. I wonder if we would, I don't think we would. We wouldn't have the same result.
No, because it would have to be, he has to have that failure, sort of. I mean, because ultimately he achieved his goal, but like Leia says, at what cost? It's, for him, it seems to be a means justifies the ends type situation where when you're dealing with actual lives and, a limited supply of, I don't know, what do you want to call it? I keep wanting to say goods and services, but that's not right. Military equipment, I guess. That's not how it works. And, for all they know, the First Order has 15 dreadnoughts and they just use every single bomber they have to get one.
And I guess another upset that we haven't even mentioned yet, because it's so new, the Holdo maneuver.
Oh, heck yeah. That's a major upset.
Which it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's kind of a major upset because it was basically a foregone conclusion that the Raddus was dead in the water. It was basically playing decoy so that the transports could escape. And when they being the First Order, find out that, oh, we should shoot at them because, my boy DJ let him know. Yeah, she makes the ultimate sacrifice, but the ultimately amazing sacrifice. And that's a huge upset because that's a big turnaround.
Yeah.
Like, that's like the opposite of what Poe did. She does, sure, it's their biggest command ship, but it's a one for the First Order's biggest command ship. And then however many other ships get destroyed and, everything that gets destroyed along with that big command ship, because that thing's making ties, it's making walkers. So that's a huge turnaround. Big upset. All right. So finally, do you think there are any overrated upsets? Like instances where people are like, wow, I can't believe they pulled that off. But in reality, it's kind of like, nah. I think we sort of touched on some of these with the whole Maul, Qui-Gon.
Honestly, Luke with the Death Star, as much as,
like we
it
just
was
talked
the upset,
about.
but
yeah.
when you get the backstory, it's not as much of an upset as it was during A New Hope.
Yeah, in 1977, that was the upset of the century.
Mm-hmm. But it's just when you get that background of like what led to it, I would say it's not as huge.
Yeah, there were so many upsets that came before it. It's just like,
I would say kind of meh about the Resistance on Takodana.
yeah, that wasn't so much of an upset. I think that was just good timing and showing up. Honestly, bad timing showing up because they got there so late. But, they didn't really do anything because the First Order got what they wanted. I mean, technically, they didn't get the droid, but they thought they got what they wanted.
I would say Battle of Geonosis.
Yeah, I don't even know who won that battle, to be honest. It's anything that happens in the Clone Wars is like, there's no such thing as an upset in the Clone Wars because it's either way Sidious wins. So like, yeah, that's playing yourself in horse. It doesn't matter. You can destroy yourself and, whatever you win. So I think that's actually a good point. No matter how throughout the entire Clone Wars series, when the Jedi generals come back with only a handful of clones against this humongous droid army, and it's like, yay, good for you. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really matter. That's kind of depressing. Oh, but it's true.
And I'd say Obi-Wan versus Anakin is not that much of an upset. He had the high ground.
Oh my God. And I mean,
it's his master. He knows
exactly. There was probably a lot of volcanic sand around too.
Oh my God.
Okay, too far?
Too far.
Okay, sorry. But no, I'm with you. I think you're right. I think Obi-Wan should have won that fight.
Yeah.
Like, a master should always beat the apprentice. I mean,
well,
when they're at the level that those two were, when you're an old master and your apprentice is a younger person, maybe not so much. But I'm pretty sure that Mr. Miyagi would have whooped up on Danielson, even with that big age gap, though.
Yeah. What about you? Any upsets?
I think you pretty much nailed all of them, especially like throughout the Clone Wars. There's a lot of things that end up feeling like a big upset, but then again, you get to the heart of the matter, and it's like, you either lost First Sidious or you won First Sidious. Eventually, Order 66 wins, and he turns off the droids. So
yeah. Well, that's our show.
It's an uplifting podcast adventure with Hyperspace Pod Blast.
In all seriousness, though, if there are other upsets that stand out to you, please let us know at hyperspace_pod on Twitter.
You can email us at hyperspacepodblast@gmail.com.
Or check out our website, hyperspacepodblast.com. All right, talk to you later, guys.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.